he reaches out his hand of grace to lift us up from whatever may be paralyzing our lives, so that we can walk and jump and dance in newness of life before him.
So I'm just going to cut to the chase. Life is not easy. Life is tough. Life is hard. And I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that. So instead, I'm going to ask, raise your hand if you think that life is easy. I just want to see. I see in my mind, I knew that it was going to be maybe one or two people, but I knew that they were going to be under the grade of 3. And I saw little Luna's hand back there, and I'm sorry for calling you out. I don't want to embarrass you. But yes, I can imagine, because from the mind of a child, yeah, life is easy. You get up, you do what you want, and then you go to sleep, and then you do it all again the next day. And it's not until you start getting a little bit older, and it's not until things start becoming a little bit more significant and the relevance of things start to impact your life that you realize it's not as easy as I once thought it was. And you know, this concept of life not being easy has existed all throughout the ages, from generations to generations, And Homer even wrote way back in the 8th century BC, he wrote one of the most iconic stories, Odyssey. And in this, I'm not going to go through the through everything that happens in the Odyssey, but in the Odyssey, there is an individual who is making his way back home, and he's on a 10-year, it's a 10-year journey back home. And this Odyssey that Homer wrote in the 8th century BC was first translated into English in 1614. And then nearly 400 years later, in the year 2000, it was adapted into a movie with a modern, I put quotations around that, a modern retelling of the story under the title, "O Brother, Where Art Thou?" And I say modern in quotations because the setting of this movie in the year 2000 was actually 1937, rural Mississippi, Great Depression era. So, modern? And in this, they depict the runaways. They're runaway convicts. And that's how the movie begins. They're running away, and they're trying to seek this treasure. They don't know what the treasure is, or they have an idea of it, but it's based on a lie that they don't find out until later. And throughout this, there are setbacks and trials that they're experiencing. And one of the early scenes in the movie depicts them confused in the middle of the woods, lost, and they don't know where to go or what to do. And all of a sudden, it's the weirdest thing that happens, because they see people walking and singing in the woods, and they're all walking in one direction, and it's almost comical. Not almost, it is comical. And the three of them are standing there just like, nobody's supposed to be here, but yet we're seeing hundreds of people walking slowly through the woods towards somewhere, and they're singing. What are they singing? They're singing this old song, as I go down to the river to pray. And they're doing it in such a melodious tune that one of them is so excited and so curious that he doesn't walk. he runs to the front of the line and he sees that there's a river down further in the forest. And in this river, there's a preacher, and there's like 2-3 lines of hundreds of people that this preacher is baptizing. And something comes over this individual, and he runs. He cuts in front of everybody, and you can see him in his tattered clothes with his knees going up high, just running like a crazy person right to where the preacher is, and his arms are out, and it's almost as if he's saying, "Take me, I'm ready." And the others are looking like something has gone loose in his head. What is going on? But when the preacher, he doesn't hesitate. The preacher baptizes him, and as soon as this individual comes out, he starts screaming, "I've been saved! I'm saved! I don't have to worry about that no more." And everybody is looking confused. Well, only his 2 friends are looking confused. The people who were at the river, they understood. And so even though he's looking really crazy and he's looking like nothing, like he's not making sense, those who have experienced what he's experienced understand the sentiment that when everything in your life has been going wrong and you have an opportunity for salvation, you become consumed with this joyous delight that makes other people think that you're crazy. Throughout the movie, there was this motive that they kept on singing based on an old hymn. And the name of this hymn is "Keep on the Sunny Side of Life." The words are as follows: "There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and side, we all also may view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day. It will brighten all the way if we keep on the sunny side of life." Continually throughout this readaptation of Homer's Odyssey, the question is asked to the viewer, not to the characters, but to the viewer: where are you? What perspective on life are you taking? Where are you in your life? Where are you in your morals? Where are you in your relationships, in your mentality, in your emotions? Where are you spiritually? Where are you spiritually? It started with a curse. And if you turn with me to Genesis chapter 3, in Genesis chapter 3, and we'll be reading verses 17 through 19. Genesis chapter 3, 17 through 19. "And to Adam he said," this is the Lord talking, "because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field." Cursed is the ground because of you. Hear me. God didn't say, because of what you did, I am now cursing you. In this circumstance, God is acting as the messenger. The deed was already done. And what God is doing is is letting Adam know the consequences of what he's already put into place. In this circumstance, Adam was the one that initiated this event, and God is the one who is explaining what is going to happen. God says, because of you is the ground cursed. And what does this mean for Adam? It means that now Adam has to work to be able to eat. But even in explaining this curse, God interlaces promises within this. Because God doesn't say, and there will be days where you will not eat. No, God says, and you shall eat the plants of the field. And he says from the thorns and everything that they will be able to eat. Other versions say that they will have bread. God is giving them hope, because at this point, Adam is probably feeling pretty hopeless. And God's saying, yes, I understand. This is a terrible situation. I wouldn't wish this on you for anything, but you're not alone. And there is hope. So where are you, Adam? How are you going to approach this? What perspective are you going to focus on? You know, I was asked recently when I was a little kid what I wanted to be, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you earlier, but even now, there's a part of me that loves the idea of gardening and farming. And yes, when everybody wanted to be a police officer, a doctor, when they wanted to be a lawyer or even the president of the United States, I'm sitting in my seat and I'm saying, I want to be a farmer. There's something about working in the soil, tilling the soil, preparing the soil, planting something, whatever it is that you're planting, taking care of it, watching it grow. Even the weeding process is somewhat therapeutic, very therapeutic. And all of that to see the fruit being produced. And not only is this fruit being produced, but you have the opportunity to take part of this fruit, to enjoy what your hands have seen come to life. And there's something about that makes me proud when I see my first tomato come up. That makes me happy when finally the stem or the stalk of what I'm planting is a little bit wider because now the weeds are out and the soil looks rich and there's no bugs on there. Well, there were, but now they're gone. And there's something amazing about that. But the work isn't easy. Because even if a few days pass by, the weeds, they start coming. They don't stop. And when God is explaining to Adam and Eve about working in the soil, I can't help but think that he's using a metaphor for what sin does in somebody's life. Because now, when sin is not present, what a glorious thing it would be to plant the seed and then just leave it, not have to worry about it, come back when it's harvest time and harvest my fruit. Because everything is taken care of because the soil is already healthy. But now, with unhealthy soil, in a world of sin, there is constant work. Constant work that's needed, constant attention that's needed to address the problem of sin. To address the problem of sin. There were two perspectives in Genesis 4, verses 1 through 6. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. There were two sides of this story. There's Abel, and then there's Cain. Both of them workers. Abel worked with sheep. Cain worked with the earth, worked with the ground. And after time, they both were bringing an offering to the Lord. And it's interesting what they brought and the attitude in which it was brought. I guess one would just assume, if you're working in this area, then you're going to bring something from that area. And if you're working in this area, then you're going to bring something from that area. And when Abel brought the firstborn of his flock, he brought it with a humbled attitude. And his offering was pleasing to the Lord. But when Cain brought his offering, it was what he was working on. It was the thing that he used his hands with, he toiled with, labored day after day, and he wanted to present this to the Lord. Right? It's in Cain's response that we understand the true motives that he had. But for Cain and his offering, he, meaning God, had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Why was he angry? I think about this, and we'll get to that. Before we get to why Cain was angry, I want to take a moment and look at Abel for a second. Paul explains in Hebrews chapter 11, and I'll wait for you to get there. Hebrews chapter 11, Paul explains a little bit more about a perspective of faith, the faith perspective that Abel had. We're in Hebrews chapter 11. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, and it's verse 4. It was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, spoiler alert, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. Faith? Faith in what? Why faith? And I think about it, and I'm like, oh, I mean, why, what reason would he have for being responsible for raising his sheep to feed the family, to get the wool, for the whatever it is, and yet he would wait until the firstborn of the new flock and take that one and end its life and sacrifice it as an offering to God? Abel didn't come up with this on his own. There was instruction behind what he was doing. And even though he did not understand the significance, the full significance of what it meant, he knew how it made him feel. And it was a feeling of, but this lamb did nothing. This lamb didn't do anything. Well, why can't, at least the one that was actually running away, at least the one that lived a long life, why not take the most mature one that was misbehaving? I have to take the firstborn? The youngest one that didn't even what? And instead of arguing with God, he trusted God. Instead of questioning to the point of defiance, he had faith. And I could imagine him with his sharp stone as he's ending the life of this very young animal. I don't understand fully, but I trust that you will continue to teach me. And as he's presenting his offering to God, I can imagine tears in his eyes. And I can imagine him and God sharing a moment. God understanding fully what this means. And Abel just now starting to understand the gravity of the effect of sin. Cain, on the other hand, was angry that God did not accept his offering. And I have to ask myself, why is it that Cain was angry? Because here's the thing, if you actually believed that what you were doing was the right thing, and you realized that it wasn't, I don't know if anger would be your first response. Your first response would probably be something like confusion. It would probably be something like, oh, I must have missed something. Can you please explain that to me again? But the fact that it's recorded that Cain was angry shows that he already had an agenda. He already had a preconceived idea of what was going to happen. And everything that happened later just solidified that. And so now what is happening is the expression of how he's already, or the evidence of what he has already been feeling and harboring inside of his heart. He had a stubborn agenda, and he expected a certain outcome. But it's God's response that gets me. Because God's response is somewhat like a counselor's response. There's no judgment in it. Instead, there's opportunity. God responds, in verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your face fallen?" Huh? God's asking Cain why he's angry. Huh. It's almost as if he's creating an opportunity for Cain to recognize what's going on in his heart so that he can have the opportunity to make the necessary changes so that he can actually receive salvation. Because in this moment, the only person that's preventing Cain's salvation is Cain. It is not God. And so God asks him, "Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen?" And he follows up by saying, if you do well, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? In the Hebrew, what I like about that word accepted, the original Hebrew word translates that to an idea of will not your face be lifted up? And it's interesting that that word would be used because his face has fallen. Cain, in his anger, has looked to the thing that he spent his life working on. He looked to the ground. And God, in his mercy, and God, in his abundance of love, is trying to impart on Cain that there's another perspective that you can have on life. You're not looking at the sunny side. You're looking at the dark. The earth that you're looking at is cursed. It's cursed with a sin that will penetrate and it will destroy. But why not allow me to lift up your face so that you can see me and what I have to offer you? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door, and it desires to have you, but you must rule over it. And again, God is not condemning him. He's saying, if he does what is right, then will not his face be lifted up? But if you do what is wrong, I'm going to push your face down into the earth. No, he doesn't say that. He says, but if you do not do what is right, if you do what is wrong, be careful. Watch out. Right now, I'm the messenger right now. Nothing has happened. Anything that happens is because of your choice. I'm just the messenger, and I'm telling you that down where you're looking, sin is crouching there. And it wants you. It desires to have you. As weeds desire to constrain the life of the new plant that has the opportunity to bear fruit, sin waits for the opportunity to strangle life and take it for itself. But you must rule over it. What power, what encouragement that God is giving to Cain, saying, listen, It feels like it's constraining you. It feels like it's strangling, like taking your very life away. But you have the power to rule over it. I'm not going to lie. There's been times in my life, more than I'd like to admit, where I suffer from depression and anxiety. And if you don't know anything about depression or anxiety, or if you have friends who have probably explained it, the moment when you feel the lowest is like a cloud around you. And this cloud is so dense and dark, and you feel constricted. You feel paralyzed. You feel like you can't do anything about it. And I felt that. And I know friends and family who have also felt that. And in that moment, it takes every fiber of your being to just sit up in your bed. It's moments like that when you're laying there and you're saying, life is not easy, life isn't fair, and these thoughts just add to the thickening and the density of this cloud that's just zapping the very life out of you. And I remember an experience with a counselor, and we were talking about emotions, and she had told me this phrase, Ray, to name it is to tame it. To name it is to tame it. And in the moment, I didn't understand what she was talking about, but with subsequent visits and subsequent experience, I recognize that as much as it takes to identify the feeling that I'm experiencing is the moment that it seems like the cloud is a whole lot clearer. Now it's not a dense cloud, smog and smoke. It's a light fog. It's a mist. And all of a sudden, I can see a light. All of a sudden, I can see a direction. I can see where I can take the next step. And I can't help but think that Cain was sitting there, letting these emotions fester, not willing to identify his anger. Instead, ignoring the emotion, ignoring what it is, and letting it go wild. Now, there's a difference when love goes wild, and there's a difference when sin goes wild. One leads to salvation, the other, complete destruction. And God charged him, you must rule over it. You must identify what it is. You, not me, I can't do it. If I do it, it will come across as condemnation. When you do it, it's conviction. I'll give you the opportunity. I'll be patient. I'll wait. But that's you. I can't control that. Brothers and sisters, where are you? Where are you in your thoughts? Where are you in your emotions? Where are you in your spirituality? Are you letting the negative aspects of sin constrict you? Are you keeping your face looking down at the ground, refusing to allow the gentle hand of God to coax your face upwards towards Him? Where are you? Have you identified it? You see, Cain didn't want to worship God. He didn't want to worship God. In Romans 1, verse 21, Paul explains this. Paul explains this idea. He says, yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. You see, Cain decided that he was going to focus on the curse. Okay, all right, okay. I see you, God. Giving us a curse, huh? Gonna curse this ground, huh? Well, I am going to show you that I can work this ground. All right, okay? I can work this ground. I'll work it toiling labor, and I'll bring you the best that I have to offer, because this ground, I'm gonna show you I did this. I did this. Cain wasn't interested in the salvation that God had to offer. He was interested in teaching God how to save. Friends, beware. The moment you start teaching God something, it's almost as if you have a foolish idea of what God is like. That God can be taught. And as a result, your minds may become even more dark and more confused than before. Cain's anger led to jealousy. His jealousy led to hatred. His hatred, when not identified, led to revenge. And in Genesis 4, verse 8, says, Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. He killed him. He didn't identify his anger and it led to jealousy. He didn't identify his jealousy and it led to hatred. He didn't identify his hatred and it led to revenge. He didn't identify the revenge and it led to murder. It's almost a foreshadowing of what Jesus said when he says, if you've hated somebody, you have committed murder. Because Jesus understood that not identifying, not overcoming, not ruling over the sin that is trying to hold on to you, is letting it run wild. But man, God's response again kills me. Not like that, but it leaves me just awestruck. Because the first thing that he says is another question. In verse 9, then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" I don't know if you catch it, friends, but God is in the business of saving. God is in the business of creating an opportunity where you can identify the sin in your life so that you can rule over it. And God is yet again creating this opportunity for Cain, asking him where his brother is. But the problem with letting sin fester is that it does cloud your mind. And it does cloud your judgment, because already Cain's idea of who God is skewed. So much so that he believes he can actually get away with a God, or get away with saying something to a God, because this God doesn't know everything. So he's going to try and save himself, as he's always been trying to do, by telling a lie to absolve himself from the situation. And he says, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? The audacity, the sarcasm, as if his brother's life didn't matter. As if life doesn't matter. The power of sin when it runs wild is to convince you that life doesn't matter. And the Lord asks yet another question, because he will not stop. He says, what have you done? Let's just get it out in the open. I'm asking you now, presenting this opportunity so that you can come clean, so that salvation can still be yours, so that you are not strangled by the restraints of sin, so that you can be saved. We've taken multiple steps backward, but that's okay, because I'm still looking forward and I'm still wanting your life. The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. God knows exactly what happens. And now, Cain, and now you are cursed. You're cursed from the ground. The thing that you've been looking for, finding your salvation in, that's the thing that you're going to be cursed from. And even if it takes your entire life to know that you cannot till the ground to earn your own salvation, then so be it. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Cain, when you work this ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain now is not dependent on his strengths. He's left to lead a life where he has to be looking to others to live. And what God is continually trying to work on the heart of Cain is, I want you to look up. I want you to look up. Because when you look up, you will see the sunny side of life. The gift that I have to offer. The gift that I have to offer. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Sounds like something Cain would say. And he continues, behold, you have driven me today away from the ground. And from your face I shall be hidden. Now sin has taken full control because he's denying his involvement, absolving himself, and blaming his situation on God, the one who's trying to rescue him from his situation. And he said, I shall be a fugitive and wander on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Woe is me. You, God, have done all of this that you're blaming me for, and you, God, have sentenced my death. And in almost a last attempt, God responds to Cain, not so. And as a way to prove this, if anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And he put a mark on Cain. And I can't fathom it. Because all while Cain has blamed God for his circumstance, all while Cain has done everything to walk away from God, God still puts his saving seal on Cain. In the hopes that there will be a moment in his life when he will turn it all around and identify the sin in his life. And if Cain didn't notice it, everybody else would. So even in his walking around, he was a witness for God's mercy. Because God never gives up. No matter what you throw at him, his love never fails. God wants to lift your face from the sin of a cursed earth to the sunny side of life that comes with faith and trust in him. And I'm brought back to Abel. And I'm brought back, and I'm closing here. And I'm brought back to where this idea, what it was that God was trying to teach Abel and Adam and Eve and all of the generations about sacrifice and giving. And I remember sitting in class in the seminary, and I was asked a question, and this question sounded like a trick question, and I don't like trick questions. So I won't answer them. Instead, I'll just think, and I'll smile, and I nod my head, and I will wait, because I don't like trick questions. But the question was about the first death that's recorded in the Bible. And in my mind, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, Cain killed Abel. Oh, but before that, Abel killed the lamb as a sacrifice. But in Genesis 3, verse 21, that there is the first death that is recorded. And we're going back to the Garden of Eden. And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skins and clothed them. Because as you remember, Adam and Eve were trying to cover up their nakedness by sewing fig leaves together. And God said, you will not survive with what you can create to protect yourself. What you need to survive is a sacrifice. And it doesn't say wool, and it doesn't say fur, it says skins. And the word translated can also mean hide, but it is the very thing that keeps the animal intact. And wherever this skin came from was once alive. And so Adam and Eve witnessed the very first sacrifice for them, for their sake, at the hands of God, who was interested in keeping them alive. And he clothed them. And I can imagine the awkward, uncomfortable feeling as Adam and Eve were walking around, and everywhere they went, they realized they were wearing something that was once alive and now for their sakes is dead. For their sakes. And the story seems to come full circle when Abel kills the lamb and recognizes the symbolism that something has to die for the sake of man's sin. But it's more than just something, it's someone has to die for the sake of man's sin. Brothers and sisters, where are you? Are you living in sin? Are you living with your face down, not willing to accept the gift of God's sacrifice? Are you living with the thoughts clouding your mind, distorting the perception of who God really is?